Ladies and gentlemen, sorry for cutting into your lunch. I hope you're enjoying your lunch. We're now going to push on with our Decarbonizing Shipping session. And I'd like to, first of all, invite Mr. Roger Charles, Executive Director of Environmental and Social Risk Management at Standard Chartered, who will give a short presentation, and then a panel discussion will follow. Mr. Charles.
Good afternoon, ladies and gents. My name is Roger Charles. I work for Standard Chartered within their sustainable finance team. Today I'll give you a short overview of our view on decarbonisation within the industry and some of the opportunities that we see as a bank in terms of financing decarbonisation through this decade and up to 2050. So I'm sure you've seen most of these statistics before, so I'm not going to go into them in too much detail. But I guess the key is, although shipping is probably one of the least energy-intensive ways to carry goods, it is extremely carbon-intensive, given that it is wholly reliant on fossil fuels, and as such, a very hard to decarbonize industry. One of the biggest contributors in shipping emissions today is within the container and bulk carriers and tankers, which account for about 85% of emissions from shipping. And so something needs to be done, and so there are a number of drivers which are happening today to decarbonize shipping. And the most, and we've talked about this before, is the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, setting targets to decarbonize from at least 50% by 2050. The EU has already set goals as well, which are very similar or more ambitious. And we have certain initiatives happening globally, such as the MPA of Singapore, which is committed to a number of initiatives, such as the Green Ship Program, which then is trying to incentivize more energy-efficient ships. Other initiatives or other drivers to decarbonization today would be implementing a carbon tax, which would help companies deliver reductions in emissions by switching to cleaner energy. Although this does have its challenges, especially who will pick up the cost. Will it be the regulators? Will it be the customers at the end? And then you've got the financial institutions now getting involved. And today I'm very happy to know that we have signed up to the Poseidon Principles, who are also looking at their own portfolios. And it's not just shipping. We're looking at energy. We're looking at manufacturing. We're looking at all of the carbon-intensive sectors, and shipping being one of them. Is how do we meet our own targets to reduce emissions in line with the Paris Agreement. And so we have the Poseidon Principles, and we've signed up, and this will help us in the future to determine the types of vessels and projects that we might or might not want to finance. The graph on the other side is from Sustainalytics. It's an analysis of the financial risks that they see to the industry. Obviously, we see emissions and effluents and waste and carbon from own operations as being the high-risk areas, and these are the big focus areas today. Occupational health and safety is next, and what we're seeing is an increase in interest around human capital, specifically around seafarers' rights, which I'll come to a bit later. So definitely from a carbon perspective, this is the big focus of most financial institutions right now, in terms of how we interact and how we channel finance, or how we finance decarbonisation, where we put our money, into what technologies we want to finance, what are the trends going forward. So the cost of decarbonisation, and I'll quote some UMass figures here. So to halve shipping's emissions by 2050, it's estimated between 1.4 and 1.9 trillion US dollars, and we'll need $350 billion approximately within this decade. Now, interestingly enough, only 13% of this 1.4 trillion dollars is going to go towards ship-related investments. This will be for technological improvements and operational improvements. And the large share, the lion's share of this money will go to land-based investments. And obviously, Andreas has talked about this earlier, and this is around investments into low-carbon and zero-carbon fuels. So why 87% into land-based investments? It's because the infrastructure is still in its infancy. It's just not there. And so in terms of upstream infrastructure, including production, that's why we need this additional capital required. In terms of conventional levers, and that's for technological, in terms of ship-related technological efficiencies and operational efficiencies, we'll only see about 30 to 40% reduction by 2030, and that's in this decade. And that's to prepare the industry for alternative fuels and emerging technologies needed to reach zero carbon by 2050. This capital will be required over the next 20 years, and between 2030 and 2050, it will have to be a joint effort between all stakeholders involved. And this means regulation, financial institutions, the shipping industry as a whole, along the whole value chain. So what do we have today? So at scale, the solutions we have right now for decarbonisation over this decade, we have fossil-based LNG, we have biofuels, and we have energy efficiency. Now, each of these has its own limitations. We have fossil fuel energy, which is, it's limited CO2 reductions. It's about, 20 to 25% reduced from using HFO. So limited GHG benefit. And then you have methane leakage, methane slip within the supply chain, which then, so actually since writing this presentation a few days ago, the World Bank has already come out and said that they don't see LNG, they reject LNG as a usable ship fuel to reduce CO2 emissions in shipping. And they are pointing to ammonia and hydrogen. And we're seeing more and more of these institutions now coming out to say that gas is the new coal. And I think that's going to become more of the rhetoric to 2025. We have biofuels, which are costly, and the availability of them, because due to sustainability issues of upstream, in terms of deforestation, land use changes, competition with food security, and availability of sustainable biofuels that we have today. And then finally, we have energy efficiency. And we see this as untapped potential. Technical efficiency, operational efficiency, there's the cost benefit. This is BAU for the industry. It's still being developed. There's still more to do. And we see this as being the key over this decade. In terms of future solutions, obviously, we've got new propulsion systems, marine propulsion systems, of where you've got, more efficient dual fuel engines, which will work more efficiently on both fuels, which is a double benefit. Fuel cells, and if we can scale them to support ocean shipping, electric. So these are in the future. whether we see these today or we see these in the next decade, these are happening now. We've got low and zero carbon fuels, and we've all talked about ammonia and hydrogen as being the fuels, but as I've said, the infrastructure is just not there right now. And so we do see this as the silver bullet. Do we really see it in this decade? Possibly not. So focusing on energy efficiency, we've got technological and operational. We've got the EEXI regulations, which will come in, which will force for slow steaming. In terms of technological, we've got hull coatings, waste heat recovery systems, and I think this slide here just shows what are the incremental values. And so when I said in the previous slide, it's only going to achieve us between 30 and 40%, but that's with additional R&D done and more developments within the industry over this decade for energy efficiency. And the benefit of all of this is that when we do one day get to low or zero carbon fuels, you'll need to still be energy efficient. There is the whole density, fuel density, where you don't want to carry this much fuel, even if it's hydrogen. So energy efficiency is very important today in this decade to support the introduction of low carbon fuels and zero carbon vessels in the future. So the role of financial institutions, we develop solutions to help drive decarbonisation. And for shipping, and sustainable performance. And so within shipping, we have a number of products that the bank has developed and all the banks have developed. And this is around green bonds and transition bonds and sustainability-linked loans. And right now, the focus of all of these green financial products is around decarbonisation, mainly. It's around energy efficiency. It's around bringing in more ships fueled by LNG. It's around looking at reducing your EEOI over a period of time in line with the IMO requirements, or more ambitious. And so you'll see a lot of sustainability-linked loans now that we're doing, whether it's on a ship basis, on a vessel-by-vessel basis, or by a fleet basis. We are looking for reductions over time. And I guess this now tallies in and dovetails directly into Poseidon Principles, into the Sea Cargo Charter, and to help over this period of time, over this decade at least, drive innovation, R&D into more energy efficient ships. So the use of proceeds, I guess from a sustainability-linked loan, there are slight differences here. So a green loan is going, the use of proceeds is very specific. It's going specifically to LNG or hydrogen fuel ships, whereas a transition loan will be very much similar. So we first started with green loans, so we defined what green is. And now we're seeing, well, as I've said about the World Bank, and now this new idea that gas is the new coal, that we're not going to see gas as being that fuel over this decade as being called green. So what we do see it's going to be called transition, because it's still needed. It's not like you can just get rid of gas today, right? Or say gas is the new coal. We can't phase this out. So we will have transition bonds, which would account for new LNG vessels coming into the fleet, onto the waters over this decade. Then you've got sustainability-linked loans, and that's very much attached to targets being set over the lifetime of that loan. And year on year, you would need to meet certain targets. And it's very good that it's amazing for shipping. It's probably at the forefront of this. And compared to any other industry, that we're working with at the moment in carbon-intensive industry, as where they've actually set the targets. They've got the IMO targets, which is based on a 2-degree scenario, and you've got the more ambitious targets, which are set out by the, under a 1.5-degree scenario. And then you've got shipping companies which are exceeding all of these. And so year on year, as long as the company or the fleet or the vessel by vessel basis meets these energy efficiency targets, then there would be discounts. And so that, I guess, for us right now, sustainability-linked loans are the most popular. And here are some examples of recent and past deals that we've done. And as you can see, it's all been around reductions in EEOI, in Energy Efficiency Operating Index. It's been where new vessels coming in have environmental class notation, so it sort of goes beyond just CO2. It looks at ballast water management. It looks at SOx. It looks at NOx, depending on the environmental class notation. But generally, as you can see, it's all very much around your EEOI. So what do we see? We've talked about what we've done but what's coming next in terms of more industry initiatives. Standard Chartered works with the SSI. I see many in the room today who work for organizations who are members of the SSI. And they're a multi-stakeholder initiative trying to improve sustainability within shipping. They have worked on a number of different areas, whether it be in ship recycling, whether it be a roadmap in terms of sustainable shipping. We're currently working on delivering on the human side of shipping and seafarers' rights, and that's very much as part of a sub-working group of the Neptune Declaration. And they've done a lot of work around sustainability for marine fuels, especially around biofuels and the availability of biofuels, the efficiency of biofuels, and and how that fits in this decade and going forward. We've got the Getting to Zero Coalition, the Poseidon Principles, as you all know, the Sea Cargo Charter, which is like the Poseidon Principles, but for charterers, where they get to choose and determine their Scope 3 impacts. And then the Neptune Declaration, which is very much around seafarers' rights and crew change. And so what we hope to see is that during this decade, banks will start to move away from just looking at CO2 as being the ultimate decider of what's sustainable or not. We hope to see that the more softer side, the more human side of shipping starts to get integrated into sustainability KPIs and how we finance and what we consider as being sustainable, and setting targets against that, and starting to develop more products that can incorporate the wider range of environmental KPIs within that. Thank you very much.